So with notification policies, it's the escalation section here. If we talk about the configuration, it's really the escalation section. That's where we create our notification policies itself. But in order to create a notification policy, we need to think about the flow of the configuration. And so it's usually easier if you start with your contacts, putting in your users, which users are going to be notified and what notifier they're going to be using, like mobile or voice or SMS. And then we create our notification policy and we add those users to the notification and what order they're going to be called out. And then we assign those notifications to an alarm or a subscription. And in the end, you get your WIN-911 notifications. So again, if we're thinking about the configuration flow, I would start with creating your users and then creating your notification policies. And then you either import your alarms and assign it to the notification policy, or you can create a subscription and assign that to the notification policy. So quick run through of the contact directory. It's now a consolidated workspace where you create a user, and under that user you can add which notifiers will be available, which if they can acknowledge alarms or not, and then we can also assign them their alarm format. And so for example, if you want a simple text email, you can assign them a simple email format. For voice calls, if you want a quicker message or a quicker voice call, you could assign them a quicker voice format. And then also we need to think about their schedules, what schedule, what shift they're going to be on. So here's a bit about the format editor. We've changed things up a bit where you can create your own, and instead of using XML, you can basically type out what you want, enter the field, which is really a insert element option. Unfortunately, it's cut off in the screenshot, but we'll see it in the demo. And so you get to choose a list of alarm properties, the details of that alarm, and insert in what it is you want to see. Once you have that created, then you can assign it to a user, to a contact. And then also we got to think about their schedule. If you're going to use the always schedule, or if you want to do a morning shift or a day shift, so you can always create a schedule as well. And the big thing to keep in mind is that when you create a shift, you want to make sure you put in the start time and end date for their actual shift. So it comes out to a 9-hour day. And then we can decide, is it going to be daily? Is it going to be certain days of the week, monthly, or however you want to do it? And probably the biggest question I get asked is how to create a rotating shift. And really, it's going to be very difficult to do that without going through the entire year and creating one schedule for the entire year. So it's almost easier, in my opinion, to create two different schedules, one if they're on one week and one if they're on a different week. And then we could use either the workspace or the workspace operator workspace to swap out their schedule whenever they want. And I'll show you that more later during the demo. All right, and so when we get into the notification policies itself, we have to think about the alarm life cycles and how that is going to affect our notifications. And so every alarm starts, it says that it starts here while it's inactive act, but that was really the last state when it became terminal. So when an alarm actually triggers, the first condition is active unacknowledged. And this is typically when the notification starts. This is when WIN-911 will send out either a voice call, text, whatever. And the operator receives that, and they have a choice. They can either acknowledge or go and try to work on the issue without acknowledging the alarm. Typically, your operators are going to acknowledge that they've acknowledged the alarm, so it's going to follow the path here where now the alarm has changed states to active act. And this is going to be a state change, and you can choose whether or not you want a new notification for the state change or not. Same is true. Let's say the alarm actually clears on its own before anyone acknowledges it. So now it becomes an inactive, unact alarm. And we can choose if we want a notification for this state change as well. Now, at some point, an alarm needs to become acknowledged in order to become terminal. And so if we follow the bottom path here, the alarm becomes acknowledged, the operator resolves the issue, the alarm becomes inactive, and now it's changed states to terminal, inactive, and act. And this is typically when the alarm clears from your SCADA, or it will also clear from WIN-911. Now, this doesn't quite apply with OPC because OPC doesn't always have the acknowledgement option, and so typically you can't acknowledge back to OPC from WIN-911. But if we're referring to Rockwell, Factory Talk Alarm and Events, InTouch, System Platform, they all follow this path. And so in the end, we want every alarm to complete its life cycle by becoming inactive and acknowledged. And WIN-911 and also a lot of SCADAs have tools in place to where you can automatically acknowledge these alarms when they return to normal. Or you would have to have some sort of operator either do it from WIN-911 log viewer or from the HMI itself. And so this is going to come into play when you decide which type of notifications you want to receive. And we'll show you that here in just a minute. All right, and so this is the first part of our notifications where we're creating it. We give it a name. We decided we want to select certain contacts. You can choose all contacts, which basically means notify everyone in your contact directory in no particular order. And so most people want a specific order, and so I'm going to choose selected. We can decide if we want to wait before the notification is sent. Sometimes I see a use case where during the day they want to acknowledge from the SCADA, and at night they will acknowledge through the WIN-911 notifier. And so they might put a delay of 5–10 minutes to give their operators time to do it from the HMI and the SCADA. All right, and so once we start to get into our, once we start to get into our call list, this is the order in which people will get called. And I've actually set up some delays. So what this is saying is going to send me a mobile alert. If it fails, it's going to wait 1 minute and try one more time. If it succeeds, it's going to kick in the delay after, so it'll wait 1 minute before notifying my email. And then the same is true. If it fails, it will wait, it will retry for in 1 minute. And then if it passes, it will wait 1 minute before going to the next person. And then down here, we can set up how often we want to repeat the list. And this will go until the alarm becomes terminal. So again, in the previous slide, we saw that a terminal alarm is when it reaches the inactive acknowledged state. And now with our repeats, we can set how long we want the repeats to delay. So this is a good example of a pretty solid escalation where it notifies everyone within a few minutes. If no one's acknowledged the alarm, or if the alarm hasn't cleared, then it's going to wait 30 minutes and then send out a new notification. You don't have to set it up that way. Perhaps you just want a single notification and that's it. We could change this notification repeat to 0. This disappears, so there's no more delay. It only goes through the list one time and that's it. So you can decide how you want to do it, whether or not you want an escalation or not. So on this next slide, this is the bottom part of the notifications. This is just below where we selected our contacts. And this is where we can pick and choose which notifications we actually want to see. And so again, this follows the alarm's life cycle. And every alarm starts off as active unacknowledged. And in the perfect world, your operator receives their notification and they acknowledge the alarm. And since we have active acknowledged selected, they would also receive a follow-up email or notification that the alarm is now active acknowledged. And then they go and clear the issue, resolve it, and the alarm returns to normal. So now it changes its state to inactive acknowledged, the terminal section. And in this case, I wouldn't receive a follow-up. But if we check this box, we would receive a follow-up. And then, of course, we have this state here, inactive unacknowledged. Now, when that happens, again, it's not completed its life cycle. It hasn't reached terminal yet. So at some point, someone's going to need to acknowledge that alarm, either through the HMI, through log viewer, or however, even through WIN-911. Or we can always check this box down here to automatically acknowledge when it returns to normal. And that will ensure that your alarm completes its life cycle, it becomes terminal, so it disappears from log viewer, it disappears from your SCADA. And if that alarm were to trigger again, it starts its whole process all over again with the alarm life cycle of becoming active unacknowledged. And so sometimes what can happen is an alarm bounces. It goes active unacknowledged, it goes inactive unacknowledged, it goes active. That's all part of its same life cycle. And once you get those notifications once, for example, let's say the alarm goes active, unacknowledged, you receive your notification, the alarm goes inactive, unacknowledged, you receive your notification for that. If it goes active again, we're not going to see that notification unless we have the update previously notified selected. And you have a couple of options here. You can either restart the call out list altogether or just notify anyone that was previously notified. So let's go back real quick to the previous slide. And in this situation, let's say it goes active, unacknowledged, and I receive my notification. The alarm goes inactive, unacknowledged. I'm going to receive that notification because I was already previously updated. Now, if for some reason it gets acknowledged before it makes it to the next person, then that means they haven't been notified yet, so it's not going to follow that procedure where it says update the previously notified. So hopefully all that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. And then going down a little bit further, we have the voice override. So this is useful if you have a mixture of maybe mobile and voice and email, because a lot of times you might want the follow-up email, but you don't want another call when it goes acknowledged or becomes inactive. So we can override that so it still sends out an email to the people if they want, but it won't call someone back because the alarm's been acknowledged. All right, and so now we need to talk about the alarm sources a bit because we've already created our contacts, we created our notification policies, and so now it's time to decide, are we going to import our alarms? Are we going to create subscriptions? And so we choose our data source. Today we're going to be using Factory Talk as an example, but I can touch a little bit on the others as well. And so typically with Factory Talk, it's subscription based only. System platform is subscription based only. However, you can import tags typically with Simplicity, iFix, and InTouch, and OPC. So it's good to already have your contacts ready, your notification policies in place, because when you go to select your imports, you can decide to assign all of your tags to a notification policy that's already in place. So that way everything gets imported, it's all assigned to the correct notification policy, and you're ready to go. If the alarm trips, it'll trigger that notification policy and call out to those users that you have selected in there. And then our final thing is, again, we need to assign these notification policies to our subscription or to our alarm. And so in this case, we have a subscription to bring in high priority alarms. That's a name we gave it. It's going to contain anything in the group for water, and it does not contain the door alarm. So if you have a bunch, like if it's looking for this group here, anything in water, and perhaps you have a door alarm in your water group, and so you'll only get your alarms for the water, anything that contains water, and you will not get your alarm for anything that's got door alarm in it. Then also we can do an or statement to where we can bring in the specific priority. Perhaps the alarm doesn't belong to this group, and so, but we still want to bring in high priority alarms, so we can add this as well. And then right here is where we choose our notification policy. It's a drop-down menu, so any notifications you have in place will be available to be selected there. Now, one thing I should point out, and this might be a little bit easier to explain in the demo, you can have certain calls, certain alarms go to certain call groups. And so we would create our filter to bring in certain types of alarms, assign it to a policy. We could create another filter below this to bring in other types of alarms and assign it to a different water notification policy. And then last here is our operator workspace. And so this is our quick, easy way that you can quickly adjust the call out list, or you can change someone's schedules. And so right here, there's two tabs, notification policies, where I select which one I want to edit. And then I have the connections. The connections is basically all my users where I can change their schedules if I want. And I'll show you that again more in the demo. The nice thing about Operator Workspace is that it doesn't give you access to everything, so it's more limited. It only lets you change the call-out list, the notification policies, and you can embed a button in your HMI to click on that, launch this, and that way operators can quickly change it if they like. All right, let's go ahead and get into the demo. And so here's our operator this is going to be our WIN-911 workspace here, our icon here. You can always launch it from the start menu if you need to. So once WIN-911 is installed, it assigns its folder, and under there, we're going to have the ability to open up WIN-911 workspace. And so let's start with that. And a couple of things I just want to point out real quick about the workspace. It flows from left to right now, and all our configuration options are now going to be vertically here. And then as we configure, it goes horizontally, which is, I think, a much easier UI and easier to deal with and more intuitive. Couple of features we've added is the light and dark down here. We can change it to a dark mode if we like, or to a light mode. I prefer the dark mode, so I'm going to go ahead and switch it to that. And then also, once we get familiar with our icons here, we can always consolidate and collapse that to where we can just go to our icons. So if I want my contacts directory, I can bring up that. And right now I only have my 2 users. And you can double click somewhere on this row to quickly start configuring if you want. I can add a new voice or a new notifier to myself if I want. For now though, I'm just going to stick with my email. So if I expand my email here, this is where I can set my schedule, and this is where I can change my alarm formats. Now this assumes that you already have the schedules you want created or the alarm formats you want created, because you would create them somewhere in another spot, and then once you create that, they become available in the drop-down menu. So now let's get into the notification policies here. Actually, I'm sorry. Let me skip, or let me go to the formats real quick because I kind of wanted to show you the new simple option. We still have the XML option, so you can use the canned, and if you want to do the scripting, we still have that option available, but I really prefer the simple one. So here's one I created, a custom one, where I just started typing a name, and I would use this add element here to insert which options I want. These are all basically mapped to an alarm detail screen, so you can decide exactly what you want to see here. It's pretty nice. And so if you're going to create a new one, we could either go with email here, we can go with SMS, or with our voice. And then with schedules, just real quick, I wanted to point out that if you want to create a new schedule, we could say add new one, we give it a name. And it's important to choose your start time for the shift itself, not for the entire week or not for the entire year. This is going to be for the shift itself. So if it's going to be an 8 to 5 type deal, we would make sure it's going to be 8 a.m. for the first one, and our end time is going to be 4 to 5 o'clock. Once we have our end time set, then we can create our reoccurrence. And so we go into our reoccurrence, and maybe it's just going to be Saturdays and Sundays. So we can uncheck those. And so now we have our shift for 9 hours. We have the days that they're going to be on. Once we save that, it becomes available in the drop-down menu. All right, so we have a quick question here on the operator screen, the operator workspace. Can you put a password on it? No, you cannot, not at this time. However, I suppose if you embed a button in your HMI, you can make it to where only certain people who log into your HMI can see that button. So that's one way to do it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and cancel to that. And lastly, real quick, I just want to mention roles. So roles is a way of grouping people together. It's not necessary for the system to function. It's really just for organizational purposes. All right, so let's get into the notification policies. Right now I have two. I have my wastewater alarms and my water alarms. They're really just contacting the same people, no big deal there. So let's assume we're creating a new policy here, notification policy. So we'll give it a test, and then I can choose whether I want to do all contacts or selected contacts. And I'm going to say selected, and then from here we can start adding the people that we want. So we open this, and it's going to give me a list of my available contacts and what notifiers they have available for them. So I'm going to go ahead and select them all for now. We'll hit yes. And then I can choose if I want to set up upon failure. And usually it's a good idea, especially with voice, to set up at least one retry with at least 1 minute between the retry. And then if we want to set some sort of escalation where perhaps I want the alarm first before anyone else, I can set up a delay after. But for now, we're just going to say um, provide it to the entire list. And then here is where I can choose if I want to repeat or not. I can set it up to repeat up to 5 times or until the policy stops. We can set it to 5, and then I could choose something like 30 minutes here, and this would give us a 30-minute escalation until the alarm becomes terminal, basically. And if the alarm becomes terminal before this 30 minutes is up, it'll disappear from log viewer, and it'll be ready to go. It'll be all good and cleared out. And so then we have our notification behavior, which alarms we actually want to see. And so if I were to choose inactive, uncheck basically everything, I only want this one, it was just going to send me one email and that one email only. Now, if I want to receive a state change, like for example, let's say the alarm goes active, I get my email notification and then it goes inactive, I'm not going to see that notification because I have it unchecked. But if it goes active again without being acknowledged, I will receive an update based on the fact that I have update previously notified contacts. If I have do nothing set, then I won't see that state change if it bounces from inactive back to active again. The only way that happens again is if it starts its life cycle all over again, which we're talking about where the initial event typically is an active unacknowledged alarm. And if it goes inactive unacknowledged, I would not see that event. If it goes back to active again and I have do nothing here, I'm not going to see it go back active again. So it may not be a bad idea to go ahead and have update previously turned on. It really just depends on how you want to set up the system though. Now notice one thing that's going to show you under voice is that you're not going to see these options because they're not even selected here. The only time we would see these options show up is if we actually select them. And then we can choose to not have them call back when inactive or not call back when acknowledged. Because that's your typical, I'd say your typical way of doing it with voice. Typically calls the first person on the list, If they answer and acknowledge the alarm, you don't want it calling everyone else down the list, so it's not going to keep calling everyone else. But if they have an email or an SMS or a mobile set up and we have these checked, this will ensure that they get a follow-up email for that state change. And then our last piece here is where it's used by. This is after we assign it to someone. Once we assign it to an alarm, sorry, then it will show us what alarms are triggering this notification policy for us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this one here. And I'm going to try clicking on this one again and see what happens, because that was acting a bit strange. Okay, so now it's acting normal again. This is the one where I have them all selected. And so I have my set up to send me my email first. And so let's go take a look at how I have that set up. This is going to be under the alarm sources. And I'm using Factory Talk today. And so if we go look at my Factory Talk source, we got our application set up. And then below here is where I have my subscriptions. And it's telling me which notification policies is going to trigger. And again, these are a rank. It's like a bucket, I guess a waterfall, I guess you could say. When the alarm comes in, it's going to check rank 1 first and see if it matches any of these filters. If it matches, then it's always going to pick this one. If it doesn't match, then it moves on to the next one and it will check this filter. If it matches, then it will use this one. If not, then the alarm's not going to come into WIN-911. It would need to match one of these filters here. So sometimes it's not a bad idea to create a catch-all as your bottom one. And sometimes you can do this for testing. We'll say, just give me everything, all alarms, and we can create a filter that's just going to use the wildcard star. That means give me everything. And we can assign this one to the do not notify. So that way, for testing purposes, we can see what alarms are going to come in when we set the wildcard to all, and we don't necessarily have to bug anyone to see which ones are happening or for testing that. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this out for now because I kind of like how I have mine set up. So again, we need to trigger an alarm either through subscription or through an import. We need to assign that subscription or that alarm to a notification policy. That notification policy triggers the contacts and the voice or the notifiers. Before we do that, before we actually get into testing and showing you log viewer and whatnot, let's talk about importing alarms. So if we were to go to something like InTouch, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it since I don't have a CSV file, but when we go to import and we choose our file, and yeah, it's not going to let me click next, so maybe this isn't the best option. I could create one manually. But during our import process, we get to choose what alarms we want, and there's going to be a place where you can choose which notification policy to assign it to. So this is where I think it's a good idea to have your contacts ready, your notification policies in place, and then you import your alarms, and during the import process is when you choose which notification policy, because that way, let's say if you have 1,000 alarms, it's all going to choose that notification policy, and that way you don't have to go in later and go through each and every alarm and change the notification policy. So best to have that in place before you import. I think I can do one like a manual tag. So we'll do like a manual tag here where I create maybe a name. And then here is where we see we can choose our notification policy, what this alarm would trigger this basically. Let's go with this one. Something like this would work. Okay. So we have a question that only applies to InTouch and not InTouch HMI. I'm guessing you mean like InTouch Edge. I thought Edge still had an option for importing alarms as well. I think that one has a choice of either doing subscription or import. So the big ones that I know you can't import to are Factory Talk and System Platform, but I believe the other options you can with iFix and InTouch. Um, Hopefully that answers your question, Philip. If not, let me know and we can clarify. But yeah, I believe you're talking about the difference between InTouch and InTouch Edge there. Unfortunately, right now, Edge is not even supported on 2021. We plan on releasing that at R2. System platform is actually available now. We can connect to system platform. It's just InTouch Edge that is not available, and so we plan on having that released during our release 2, R2, which is going to be at the end of Q3. All right, and so now with the system starting to come together, we've created our contacts, We created our notification policies. We've assigned our notification policies to either our subscriptions or to our alarms. And so now it's time to start testing the system. Best way to do that is with WIN-911 Log Viewer. This is our bread and butter for troubleshooting what alarms are coming into WIN-911, who's getting notified, in which order. And so let's go with that. I'm going to go ahead and minimize. We'll go to our little HMI here, get that started. And so I have a couple alarms, well, 4 alarms set up. So if I trigger one of my water pump alarms, we should see that come in the log viewer. And I have the subscription set up to where water alarms go to my water group, and the wastewater go to my wastewater group. All right. So here we can see our alarm came in. We can see what notification policy it took. It took the wastewater. And right now we are in our first state change, our first initial of it alarm state, which is active unacknowledged. And so this is going to start the process where we see our first alarm, our first notification. And so let's go take a look at that one. This is going to be the water one. So let's expand that. We'll select the water. Oh, it wants me to save changes. Let's go ahead and save changes. And we'll go to water alarms. And so right now, these are the options I have selected. So right now it's in this first state change here. It's active unacknowledged. And so we got our first notification. I can double click somewhere on this alarm row and drill down into the properties for this specific alarm and actually see like which notifications got sent out. And so right now we're looking at the 1-minute delay because I had that delay between users set up. So the initial 1 minute just cleared. And now we're going to see my next notification where it's going to go to my email. And then I also have an acknowledgement tab. I can see if someone acknowledged it from here. I have the notification policy execution. So right now we're still in the initial event. Now let's say the alarm state changes and we're going to go with just making this one inactive. And I think with factory talk, typically when an alarm goes inactive, it's still going to show up here because now it's an inactive alarm, but it hasn't completed its life cycle yet. It's still part of the same life cycle. So we're now in the state where it's inactive unacknowledged. And so I do have that option selected. And so we should start seeing follow-up emails for that because here we go. I have notified previous turned on. And so it's going to notify me that that's happened. And if we check my notifications now, I'm going to see that I've been re-notified. Both my mobile user and my email user have been notified. We can check the call flow here to see what's happening. So right now we have the re-notify kicked in, re-notify kicked in. And so now it's time to decide. I mean, in order to clear this alarm, we need to complete its life cycle. And so we need to acknowledge it. But let's say it goes active again before we get a chance to acknowledge it. So we're going to go back, trigger it again. And so now Factory Talk should change its state to an active unacknowledged alarm. All right, and so it is active again. If we go look at it here, we can see that it's now active unacknowledged. And because I have re-notify on state change turned on is the reason why I'm getting these notifications again. Now, if you don't want any type of re-notification, you only want the initial event, then we could just uncheck these boxes there and turn this off, and that way you just get one email and that's it. And so if people are, if they're fine with that, that's fine. But if you need to know that the alarm is bouncing, then you're going to want some sort of re-notify turned on here. I'm going to cancel those changes for now so we can keep it going. So if we double click on this and drill down into it again, we can see that the re-notify is kicking in. And if we go to the state changes, we can see that the states are keep changing here. So now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge it. I can acknowledge it from here. I can acknowledge it from my notifier if I want. And so we will acknowledge and go back, and now we have an active acknowledged alarm. And again, it's still not going to complete its life cycle yet because we have to wait for it to go inactive and be acknowledged for it to actually complete. And so at this point, if we clear it, fix the issue, hit 0, it should clear now because it's reaching its terminal state. And so it's disappeared from there, and it's going to disappear from us as well. So I just wanted to give everyone a chance to see if they had any questions about that, or if there's something that might be confusing about that, or if it looks like it's making sense. Here's probably a good time for any clarification questions if you have them. please let me know either through the chat or through the question box in your GoToWebinar. All right, so let's talk about the different options we have a bit more, because I'd like to show you this a bit more. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck these options, and I'm going to keep this re-notified still turned on for now, but I only want to see a notification if it goes active. So we're going to save those changes, and we are going to trigger our water alarm again. Okay. So now we have a new initial event. Basically, the alarm lifecycle starts all over again. So new alarm, if we double click on it, new notifications, brand new call flow, where we've already sent out an email, sorry, a mobile connection, and then we're going to be waiting for our 1 minute. And so at this point, if we go with saying that the alarm is going to be acknowledged, I'm not going to see a follow-up email. If anything, we should see the fact that, yep, so we got one acknowledged here. Still only by one notification, but with mobile, I guess mobile was probably the best example, because mobile is hard coded to show the different state changes anyway. Since it's in the app, it's really easy to use, so you're going to see that happen. But with email or with the SMS, you wouldn't receive a follow-up there. And again, with the voice calls, you wouldn't receive a follow-up there as well. And so we have now an active acknowledged alarm, and uh, there was really no one to notify because I had notify turned off, and it didn't make it to my email anyway. So let's change things up a little bit more. So now we're going to go and actually put my email at the top instead of my mobile. So we'll see how it reacts with email instead, because that's probably a better choice. So again, we only have the one notification option selected, and we will trigger this alarm again. By the way, I'm hitting this little arrow here to get back. So now we have a new initial event. We'll go ahead and double click on that. It's starting the process all over again. And now we have one email sent out. We'll go ahead and acknowledge it. And no re-notify, because I actually have that option turned off. Even though I have re-notify turned on, I don't have that state change selected, so I'm not going to receive a new email. I'm only going to receive the one. So hopefully that's all kind of making sense and kicking in. Now's a good time to ask any questions if you like. We can try different scenarios if you like. I can actually show you what's happening in my email as well if you like. I can pull that over and we can see what alarms are coming in, which ones aren't. Give me just a second. So let's clear these out real quick, so we can actually watch it as it comes in. We're going to redo this one more time so we can actually see what emails are available and what's coming in. So we'll clear it. Should clear from log viewer. We'll trigger it again. And that's probably the most common use case I get with people with email and SMS, is that they really just want one notification. They don't want to get spammed with everything. And so keeping the re-notify on, just in case the alarm goes active, inactive, active again, is usually a good idea. And then turning off the ones you don't want to see is a good idea. But keeping this one on, of course, you always want to keep that one on in case it gets in a scenario where the alarm is bouncing from inactive back to active again. So we will go ahead and acknowledge that alarm. And it should change states, and we'll see that there's no new notifications going out, no new email, basically my one email, and that's it. That's all I got. So now we'll see the difference. I want to just show now that, what happens if you do check them all, what can happen with the email. So we'll save that. And we're going to go ahead and clear this alarm out and go through it one more time, so you can see now that it's basically going to send a state change or send an email for every single state change in this case, which could be interesting if that's what you want. Most people don't. So this is where I think it's really nice that you can pick and choose which notifications you actually want to see. So we're going to go ahead and trigger that one more time, and then we're just going to see how often it actually goes. So I should get my initial email, or did I already get it? There we go. And so then if I decide I want to acknowledge the alarm, we'll go ahead and acknowledge it. That's a state change. It's now active acknowledged. And we chose that notification policy here to show me that one. And so it should be kicking in an email for me any second again. And there's my second one now changing states to active acknowledged. And then if we clear it, I do have that option selected as well. So it's going to send me a third email. And so if the alarm started bouncing in this case, I would be basically getting an email for every state change. So that's where it's kind of nice to pick and choose which ones you want there. So my third email should be coming in now. And we're going to see the state change now from inactive to act. So hopefully that all makes sense. Again, let me know if you have any questions about clarification. Um, hopefully this was informative. If not, let us know how we can improve that a bit more. If you can think of some features we should be adding there or something else you'd like to see there, definitely let us know. You can always submit a feature request on our website if we go to our homepage. And we have our send feedback up here. It's pretty nice because we do it based on a voting, so you don't necessarily have to log in if you don't want to. You just pick something that you'd like to see, add it to there, submit it, and then here's where we can see which options have been submitted. These are people that have asked for feature requests, and then we just, the more votes it gets, so this one has 7 votes so far, so people really like this one. They want to be able to delete orphan alarms from WIN-911 Mobile, which would be a great feature to have. The more votes again, the more likely we are to add that feature. So you're welcome to check it out. This is another one that's pretty popular, and yeah, we definitely heard this one. We're actually working on trying to create a automatic backup and redundancy, a failover, so you don't have to use the SCADA scripting, or you don't have to call in executables or manually try to do it. So we're actually looking forward to that. So hopefully, again, that all made sense. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a quick session, not quite an hour that we thought, because with the new software, it's pretty nice. It's more intuitive. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot less you have to think about, because if you ever worked with our previous version, you had to do strategies and tactics, and basically we combine those, the strategy and tactics section, into one simple notification policy. We still have our canned one, so you can always create one for, like, or you can assign something to automatically acknowledge if you like, or to do not notify, or even to notify all. So those options are still there. Um, I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. Hopefully, I didn't really explain the UI or the tools too much, but hopefully it makes sense to where, if we highlight something, we have our options down here, whether we want to uh, edit a copy of it, maybe we want to delete it, but you can't delete stuff that's in use. So right now, this one's not being used by anything, so I can go ahead and delete this one if I wanted to. If I did want to delete one of these other ones I have, I would first have to remove it from the subscription or the alarm that's triggering it. So right now I have a subscription using it. If I remove it from that subscription, then I would be able to safely delete this one. And the same is true with this one. If I wanted to delete it, I would have to first remove it through the subscription. Oh, I forgot the operator workspace. Let me show you that. So that is the easy way of opening up Workspace and quickly changing your call out list and things of that nature. And let me bring over my demo again. All right. And so actually I'll need to play around with this. So let's say this is my HMI, and I could create a button in there that says launch operator workspace. It's basically just calling on an exe file anyway, but if not, we can always launch it from here, or put it on the start menu. We can just pin it there. And so this is where it makes it pretty nice to quickly open up your operator workspace, and I can choose which notification policies I want to alter. So I've got my wastewater one, my water alarms, and the list is pretty much the same. But if I wanted to move it around, I could. I select my box, hit my little arrow, I can move that down and possibly move stuff up. I can actually delete people from this list if I want. And then I also have my details options here, where I can choose, like, if I want to do how many times to repeat the list, how the delay before it, and then the delay after here. So, and then connections is where we get to see our list of users. And this is where I can change the schedule pretty easily. And so this is where I was recommending where if you have someone that's rotating shifts, it's almost easier to just create two separate schedules and let them change it here if they want. Trying to create a schedule for the entire year would be very tedious. So not sure how you'd want to do that. One thing to also mention about this, I made some changes here. So it's, well, it actually, I guess it didn't take my changes, but when I make a change, you're going to see this little star pop up. That means that it's waiting for you to save changes. So we just hit our save down here and it will save us for us. I guess also I'll just mention how the announcer works too. So with the announcer, you can enunciate alarms through the PC speaker, and it follows the same thing where we have a subscription. This is my notification policy that's coming in, and so these are, if these notification policies were to trigger, I could put like a prefix here, have a repeat on, and to decide which alarms state changes I want to hear. So if I only want to hear just the fact that it's active unacknowledged, I just uncheck those boxes, and this is all I'm going to hear. If you just want it like a default, you could just say, give me all notification policies. So it doesn't matter which alarm trips, which notification policy, we can start hearing it. And then we can always add another one if we want. So perhaps I want water alarms and I want to have a prefix of wastewater alarms. I could do that here. So it would enunciate the fact that these are wastewater alarms and then enunciate the alarm, and it would only do it when it's active unacknowledged in this case, or I could choose to have it when it goes terminal. And I could create another one for my water alarms and say these are water instead of wastewater. And so if one of my water alarms trips, then I will hear the prefix and it will repeat again every 15 minutes if I want, or I could just turn that off. And then I could check what options I want down here, what state changes. I'm gonna go ahead and close out of that one. And now I don't really want to save anything. And then I have my log viewer going. Well, as a follow-up here, we're just going to mention what we support right now with WIN-911 2021. We've released, or we cut out a lot of the old versions from the SCADAs. So, like for example, InTouch, we used to be able to support 2014. We still do with our Core 4, but going forward with 2021, we're not going to support the older versions of InTouch, our system platform. So right now, Edge and InduSoft are not available for 2021, but we are going to be releasing that in R2, and that will be at the end of Q3, which is coming up pretty soon, end of September, October, I think. And then with iFix, we still go pretty far back with the iFix. 5.8 SP2 is I suppose it's pretty old still, but no more earlier versions than that. And then with Simplicity, we think we still did like version 9, but it's going to be just 10 and 11. And then Factory Talk Alarm and Events, we only do 10, 11, or 12. And then with OPCDA, the only OPCDA server I know that will not work right now is Lookouts from National Instruments. We tried our best to get it to work, but eventually we found a KB from National Instruments that said that Lookout only works with their own product. So you can't use a third-party OPC client to connect with them. You can only use their product to do that. But Kepware and Cytec and ClearSCADA, those all work pretty well. I'd say out of the three of those, Kepware is my favorite. And as long as the server supports these type of data access classics, it should be good to go. And so as far as the Windows OSs that we support now with the new version 2021, it's going to be Windows Server 2016, 2019, and anything coming out going forward. And then Windows Desktop, we are no longer doing like Windows 7 or older versions of Server. We're only going to do Windows 10 and anything 1809 or higher. And as newer Windows desktops come out, like if they create Windows 11 or 12 or whatever, we'll be adding those to our list as well going forward. All right. Well, I want to say thank you everyone for joining. Hope this was informative and helpful. And if you have any questions or issues or anything comes up, you're more than welcome to open a ticket with us. There's a good chance I might grab it since I am in tech support and we can work on the issue. And we're always happy to help, always happy to answer questions. Let us know whatever you need. and we definitely appreciate your business. I wanted to say thank you. We really do appreciate you guys and gals helping us out with this, getting us the feedback we wanted to get the product better, getting everything going. It's just been a pleasure because a lot of this whole 2021 was created based on SI feedback. We targeted all kinds of groups, asked them what they wanted, and this was a collective list of what people liked. So hopefully it works out and everyone loves it. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and we appreciate you taking the time to learn about WIN-911.